Down the road from my college, there's Gala. And I went into Gala to get some instant noodles. And I had my headphones on. I'm just there waiting in line. And I hear like some commotion ahead of me. I look up and there's like some junkie like arguing with the guy behind the till. The guy kept calling him he was like, I'm from Bangladesh. Don't say that. So you man, there's like, out of my shop now. You're not welcome here anymore. Like you can take your money as leave. Like I'm done with you. And I was like, yeah, I'll see you, bro. And he's like, I know where you work now, bro. I'll be waiting for you. The guy was like, what? Who will you be waiting for? He was like, I'll be waiting out here, you. I'm gonna beat the out of you when you get out of work. I'll see you after work. And then all of a sudden, this guy, the Asian dude, jumps out behind the till. He was like, you can see me now. Runs out again, right in front of the guy, beats the out of him, beats the living daylights out of this guy. And he was like, if you come round here again, I'll be waiting. And I was like, oh, bro, I was like, oh, no. And I just walked away, like limped away. Man, I love Smithfield. It's actually the best.
I'd been basically pushing through knee-high snow all morning. About 10:30, I realised that I couldn't feel my foot anymore. Couldn't feel my fingers either. And I noticed that my entire right foot had been encased in ice. Not snow, but ice. This was ice that you literally couldn't chip away. When I realised something was wrong, I had tracked from the hills to the shop and I took shelter there, but the snow was so heavy and it started coming down again that the ambulance said they couldn't get up. And that's when I said, right, screw it. So I packed up the mail again and we tracked down to Tala Hospital. I was wearing 3 pairs of socks. They took off the first 2, but the third had actually frozen to my skin. This skin was rock solid frozen and the muscle had started to freeze and it had gotten to my bones. That's when they said, yeah, you have frostbite. It had frozen the nerves in my foot and it had completely damaged. It's not fair to say that I'm the only person who's gotten frostbite in Ireland. I'm the only person who got long-term nerve damage from frostbite and survived. A hero's job. No. Just delivering mail, just being a postman.
I was walking home alone on Thomas Street and I had ordered a Chinese, but I was really, really, really drunk. So instead of going upstairs to my bed to wait for my food, I decided to just wait on the street. And then as I was waiting, I was like too drunk to realize, and then he got like really close, and then I only realized then this man comes up to me and he was like approaching me like this like weird creepy man, and then he came up to me and he offered me heroin, and I was like, no, I'm actually okay, like I just want my Chinese. He starts taking out his little like heroin kit and is giving me a what's in my bag haul, and then is like pulling out all of his bits, like his like needles and stuff like that, and then he starts showing me how to shoot up heroin on Thomas Street while I was waiting for my Chinese. That's my almost did heroin story. But hey, if I ever have a gun to my head and they ask me to shoot up heroin, at least I know how to do it.
Just never realised I was homeless. Even though I was staying in a homeless shelter, it just didn't dawn on me. One of my most distinctive memories being there is it was around Christmas time. I was going to school like everyone else. We started learning about the homeless people in school. So I kept coming home to my mum and being like, oh my God, the poor homeless people, they have nothing, they're, you know, dirty, and they don't have any. That's how I used to think, that's how I used to feel like in school, that they had no education and they didn't have food and they didn't, you know, have clothes or anything like that. Whereas I had all these things, so it didn't dawn on me. So I started feeling really bad for them. And then we were doing the shoe boxes in school. So I wanted to make a shoebox for all these homeless children that I was learning about. You know, I had some toys in the homeless shelter, so I put together a box, sent it off for the homeless in school. And then one day in the homeless shelter, Santa came to give everyone presents. When they were giving out presents, I noticed they were all in shoe boxes, and it just all hit me at once when that was happening. And I realised that I was the homeless children that I was sending these boxes off to. And it's actually so funny because I ran to my friend that lived in the homeless shelter at the time, Rosie, and I was like telling her what I just discovered, and like she was a couple of years older than me, and she was like, yeah, obviously. And I was like, why did no one tell me? But yeah, that was like distinctive memory, because it's just so bizarre that like as a child you can just not know what's going on.
remember sitting in a pub called McNeil's on Capel Street, and I was waiting on the lads in my band. And I was sitting out in the smoking area when one of the regulars called Chris came up to me, and he told me he used to be a drummer in loads of bands in Dublin back in the 70s. I asked him if he ever played with the Boomtown Rats. With Robert? Did I fuck? No, the Rats were shite. The best band in Dublin was one called Step Aside. No, I'd not heard of Step Aside. And after a silence, Chris asked where we were practicing, and Troubadour in Ballybock, is what I said. And he asked how I planned on getting there, and I said the bus. And so I asked Chris the same question. Chapel is it? I remember there was this one building I passed on my way up. Young lad I knew. Used to live up in the attic of that. Deadly guitarist. Lived alone. But they had a smoker living in the basement. Now tell me this. Why are you keeping a smoker in the basement? You put him in the attic. Because then if he goes up, it's only him he's hurting. But sure, didn't I pass that building one day and hadn't it all gone up? The smoker had left the stove on and nodded off with a lit smoke. A terrible shame. The young lad in the attic perished. And then I said I only really meant, Chris, like, did you get the bus or the tram or something? And then Chris said, I'd walk it. We weren't soft back then.
I think because you work sometimes at very heavy seas and you have to climb up very top mast. That mast was about 40 meters high, and you step on a very small rope, completely unattached to anything. Only when you climb up to your work station, then you attach yourself with a safety harness. That's actually dangerous, and that's something that sometimes make you shake a bit and think about it very, very much so twice. I remember very well when I've seen for the first time Northern Lights when we were going at Northern Sea, and that was very amazing at night. Because if you are at sea, you feel like completely suspended in nothingness, and then you see those amazing lights up in the sky. I stopped sailing because it is a bit being like a long distance truck driver in a way. The problem is that long distance truck driver is away for maybe a week or so, but you might be away for months on end. So that doesn't mix very well with a family. And I wanted to have a family. I met my future wife, and that's what actually drove me to it.
In 1957, when he was 16, my dad joined the British Army. While he was in the army, he was part of the Royal Ulster Rifles Regiment, and he was a sniper. He was trained by the Gurkhas, who are known for being elite soldiers, who were fearless, and he also fought alongside them. He fought in places like Gibraltar and Borneo, and this was during the Indonesia-Malaysia confrontation. Due to the dense jungle, he had to quickly adapt, and also he had to have perfect precision. He was in the army for 11 years and he left when he was 27 under regular release, which means he completed his agreed upon term of service. After the army, he struggled with PTSD, had flashbacks and experienced some nightmares, but he went on to marry and raise a family.
So, Dad, I was wondering if you could share one of those stories that you would tell me when I was a baby that would apparently make me laugh hysterically, because I've since forgotten them because I was so young.
Yeah, years ago, I remember I was just newly married and I'd had a few drinks, but the time got away from me. So I thought, well, I'll just get a taxi back, but I didn't want to make a big ruckus coming into the house. So I got the taxi man to leave me off a couple of hundred, about 100 yards away from the house. So then I went in, I opened the door very carefully, closed the door very quietly, took off my shoes because I didn't want to make a big loud noise going up the stairs. So I go up the stairs, super silent mode, open the door very carefully. Then I go in, and I'm just taking off my trousers, and I was going to sit to take them off, But I missed the bed and ended up on the floor. And then I heard this voice from the bed, and you were doing so well.
We were driving in the garden and there was a garage at the back of a house, and there was this man standing in his dressing robe staring out the window at us as we were driving in. So pulled into the garage and your man had a look and goes, "Oh yeah, it's your fan belt." So he goes, "Look, I'll walk it apart and I'll be back." So we've been here now about 2.5 hours, and the man's mother, she came out and was like, "Come in and have a cup of tea and a sandwich." And we were like, "No." But our mum said, "Oh yeah, we'll go in." So we're sitting in the kitchen, and then all of a sudden, in comes the man that was after being peeping out the window 2 hours before in his dressing room. And he's just talking mad stuff to us. Asked us to come into the sitting room, and he was showing us pages out the Bible and reciting verses and all this mad stuff. And asked Alicia to come into my room and I'll show you my thing of the Bible. And we were like, absolutely not. 2, 3, go.
Between two lands I drift and I roam, pulled by the rush of life's quick flow. Born in Lithuania, had too much cake. To Ireland I moved, new steps to take. Started school there, lost my teeth in the race. Back to Lithuania, where they grew back in place. Started school again, the journey renewed, to countries that shaped me in all that I do. But deep in my heart I felt a pull. Ireland called, its voice still full. From Dublin to Vilnius, flights on repeat, chasing the pulse of two cities' heartbeat. In music's embrace where spirits rise, we share the stage under starlit skies. From Dublin's heart to Galway's shore, each concert whispers, "One more, one more." In fleeting moments, I search for peace, a life between, a place to cease.
Well, my motto now is live life to the fullest, because tomorrow is no guarantee. But that doesn't mean you should be living life recklessly.
Right.
That's not what I mean. You have to have some sort of a base as life, like if you decide to have a family, make sure you have a roof over your head, food on your table. But if you feel like take that trip, take that trip.
Yeah.
If you feel like going to that fancy restaurant just for the experience, do it. As I'm getting older, coming from a Latino family, have a good education, get the house, but at the same time you were brought up to look after family members, which then put pressure on you. That's not the case. You're not responsible for the people's decisions. You're not responsible for the people's choice. You're responsible for your own.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem.
This is the story of serendipity, a happy coincidence, how I met my friend Fiona and how she changed my life. I was looking for a place to live, and I had answered an ad in the paper, as you did in those days, to queue up outside a house to view a room. The last person to arrive, late as always, was Fiona. There was a lot of people desperate for houses, so we were further back in the queue. We weren't getting that space, so we both went out. As we were leaving, we just got chatting to each other, and she was pushing her bike and I was walking beside her. We said hello, and I said, "It really sucks looking for a house on your own." And she said, "Yeah, I know." So then we said, "Well, we're going to get a bag of chips." And we did, and we sat and had a bag of chips. And somewhere between eating that bag of chips, one of us, and we don't know who, said, "Well, we just look together." And so we did. About 4 weeks later, we got a little 2-bedroom flat that we shared, and we lived together on and off for the next number of years. So she changed my life several ways with her friendship, but most significantly, she introduced me to my now current husband of 31 years.
Bed Gellert means the resting place of Gellert. Gellert was the hound who had been left in charge of the baby who was going to be the continuation of the warrior line. The warrior returned Gellert, his faithful dog's muzzle was covered in blood, and he couldn't find the infant. And in a rage, thinking the dog had killed the infant, he drew a sword and killed Gellert. And Gellert's dying yelp was accompanied by the infant's cry. And the warrior found the baby alive under the cradle with a clutch of dead wolves that Gellert had bravely saved the infant from. And it's interesting to me because when I was a child, that story was a very traumatic story that I learned and I was very upset about. Now, in my mind, it was an Irish story. That story of the faithful dog being killed by mistake runs through loads of other cultures as well, and it pops up in Egypt and in Africa and in India. And in India, the characters change slightly. Instead of a hound and the wolves, you have the cobra and the mongoose. So it's kind of a beautiful thing when you see all these things that are sort of reflected across different peoples and in different times.
Back in the 1970s, I was running late for a train in Athlone train station. The train station at Athlone is built an old building where you had to walk through a tunnel under the platforms to get up to the platform to the trains. I knew I was running late, so I ran through the tunnel, up the steps at full kilter because I knew I was just about to make this. The train was moving, so up onto the platform I go, run along beside the train, pull down the windows. They were manual in those days. I chucked my bag in the window to notice that there was a drab old CAE employee with his hat half on, shouting at me, "Hey, you can't do that!" And I said, "Hey, watch me," says I. I opened the door and dove in and slammed the door behind me and sat down in the seat, only to realise that the train was just pulling into the station. To add insult to injury, a few minutes later the same drab employee got on and he was the one selling me the ticket to get to Dublin.
Mozambique had a history of a lot of civil war, displacement of people, of poverty, a lot of children without parents. And the community clinic was run by a Rhodesian lady called Nana. And Nana had been kidnapped by rebels during Mozambique civil war, and she'd been marched for 3 or 4 days through the jungle, and she was a woman who was just tough and wiry, and she had a real heart for just caring for people. You'd have people walk down from maybe 2 days, 3 days hiking with a sick child on their back. We had everything from malaria and epilepsy, and HIV was rampant at the time. When I arrived there in November, you had healthy young men and women. I left there in March and they were terminally ill. There was one young child when the parents brought them in, probably only 20, 21, and this child was maybe about 6, and they held their baby in their arms, and that child had malaria, and malaria just seeps all your iron stores, all your oxygen from you, and that little one just passed away there in the clinic, and there wasn't anything we could do. There was a lot of witchcraft in Mozambique. A lot of their spells and medicines would use child organs, so there would be days that the villages would know that the witch hunters were out trying to kidnap and steal children. Those days nobody travelled from the village. They were very unaware of the reality of some of these things in the Western world. I went there very idealistic and ignorant in the best sense of the word. I sometimes wonder, did white people have a place there?
It's a bit slower, just don't follow. Spread our sense like the others do. Only doing what you're taught to. Learned our father off by heart till the waterways. Told us to quiet, make myself silent, make a lady out of you. But the rings they fall from his hands, and they lost control of his land. Got them to get off their knees, and they plead, oh please, oh Pass the basket, what's did I change into? Listen closely, you might just pick up a thing or two. He's just saying what you wanna hear. Sugar-coated to hide it from those little ears. But the rings they fall from his hands, and they lost control of his land. Got them to get off their knees, and they plead, oh please, put it back how it used to be. I'll keep you from misery.
3 years ago, I was on my cottage ski trip. We're drinking heavy every night, and it comes to the last night, it's go crack, we start drinking, and like we're doing like proper scabby student stuff. Like we're going around to the shop to get naggins and €3 bottles of wine and sneak them in our like jackets or jumpers or underwear. I was informed that I was seen right next to the bar with my fella at the time, just like necking these vodka Red Bulls. So it gets to around like 1, 2 a.m. in the morning. We choose to go back to his room. I go over to the balcony and throw my guts up, and I have at the time really long hair, so all of the puke then gets like stuck in my hair. Like it's really, really glamorous. I end up falling asleep at the bottom of his bed with like shoes on in a starfish. My next memory is then waking up and someone else comes into the room. So Jerry comes on into the room and he's making a bit of a noise, and it's very obvious that he is out of it. And I wake up and I'm just like, what is going on? His next move is then he takes off his clothes as if he's going into bed, and I just hear my boyfriend go, Eva, get up. And I'm like, what? But he's also like laughing, like he finds it so funny, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, why do you need to get up? And then I notice that my back is like really wet, and I'm like, what? And I realize that this guy Jerry, who was coming into the room, mistaked the top of the bed for a fucking toilet, and he is peeing. And they're like, Jerry, stop, like go to the bathroom. And he's like, what is going on? My entire back is covered in pee. His pee, Jerry's pee. Jerry had peed on me.
was around 15 years of age. Back in them days, people my age used to participate in an event in the U Club. There was this one time where a big gang of us went to the Pine Forest up in the Dublin Mountains. We went camping, it was for a weekend. During the camping trip, we went to the Hellfire Club. We done a midnight walk in the dark. Probably the first time I've ever seen bats. We came back from the Hellfire Club and we set up a campfire. We were all sitting out on this lovely campsite. It was overlooking the entire of Dublin. You could see all the lights in the distance. When all of a sudden we seen this big ball of fire flying across the sky towards us, and this thing looked absolutely huge. We found out later on that it was Halley's Comet. It was interesting because it comes around every 75 years and it's due back in 2061, which will make me about 90 if I still see that day. My daughter will be about 55, about the same age as me now. That was Halley's Comet when there was no social media, no photographs, no mobile phones. Pity I couldn't record it, but please God I'm still alive in 2061. I may actually get to see it again.
We went to a famous amusement park in Gothenburg. It's like globally famous. I don't remember the name. I don't like the amusement rides and I was dreadfully hungover. There was one roller coaster that had like stairs up to it that were kind of enclosed, big winding tall stairs up to the side of the ride. I went on it with them, just the staircase, because I was too hungover and I hate amusement rides. It took like 45 minutes. Genuinely took about 45 minutes to walk up these fucking winding stairs the whole way. I'm like, well yeah, you can go on, I'll just come back down, I'll wait for you outside. Yeah, no problem. We got to the top and like, oh no, you're jammed into these tight stairs. There was no other way down. The only way was these winding stairs. There was no emergency exit. There was no other way to just get down. So I had to fake a call. I faked it that somebody was calling me and start acting like really upset. Like, oh no way, is everything okay? Started walking back down the stairs, and when I got maybe a quarter of the way down, the lads shouted from the top of the stairs, he's not really on a fucking call, he's faking it, he's bitching out the ride. And they were shouting at me pussy the whole way down, and everybody laughing the whole way down this long, absolutely packed. I'm trying to squeeze by people faking a phone call and my lads are shouting from up me, you're just a bitch, you won't do it.
One time I went camping with all my friends. We saw other people with little campfires. I was a part of the group where we were collecting stones to put around the campfire. When we lit it, someone reported us, even though they had a fire as well. And it turned out that you needed to have a little fire pit to have a little campfire going. And they had a wee fire extinguisher and they just shot it at our campfire. And then it just exploded. Not like exploded, but like all the sticks went everywhere. We were just trying to have fun. Afterwards, we had to use a lighter to cook our marshmallows on, and they just tasted horrible. They tasted like gas.
Well, you win some, you lose some. It was competition after competition. The first competition, I think, was in Poznan. I was actually losing the fight. It was the third round. It was 3 rounds, 3 minutes. I kicked. My left leg went to his neck, dislocates the jaw a little bit, and he loses consciousness. It's a proper knockout. The referee started counting. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And by about 5, we all noticed that the fella's foot starts twitching. It seemed serious, so the ref stopped counting, called off the fight, declared me a winner, called the doctor. The chap regained consciousness a few minutes later. The doctor asks him, how many fingers can you see? 3, what day of the week it is? Friday, and it actually was Sunday. He recovered later on, so about 2 hours later, he only was missing last few hours. Next month, went to another competition, a different city, but it was the same referee. It was my first fight, first few seconds of a fight, and my left leg goes neck, jaw, same kick, and the fella is knocked out. Tries to get up, it wasn't as bad as the previous one. The referee calls off the fight. The coach of my opponent runs up and says, no, he'll fight. And the referee says, no, he won't, I know the kick.
Tell me about my granddad's childhood.
Your granddad Edmund was living in very difficult times of Second World War. He was only 13 when the war started. He was living in the area of Lithuania. This land long ago used to belong to Poland. Russians started the war in 1940. They were present in the area, in the villages and towns. First of all, they wanted to eliminate people who would have any influence on the community. And sadly, your family was on the list to be sent away to the prison camps in eastern Russia. The friendly Lithuanian neighbor brought the message that the entire Rosohatsky family is on the list to be sent to the camps. Family was obviously very scared and had to hide.